Hello and welcome to Daily Records. I am Tommy Burton, and today we are going to be talking about the album Empty Glass by Pete Townshend, released on April 21st, 1980. This was technically usually credited to his first solo album. And it kind of is. I understand why, but it's some Townshend purists may say it's his third album. Now, this album was really interesting. It came out in 1980, and it dealt a lot with some stuff that he was dealing with during this time period. Alcoholism, drug abuse. It's interesting. He waited till after Keith Moon died to deal with that stuff. Going through some marital problems, and of course people like Keith Moon who died in 1978, and how he dealt with it. Now, probably his biggest hit song is on this album. This may be his biggest solo album. "Let My Love Open the Door" was a huge hit here in the United States, but it also featured a couple of other moderate hits, "Rough Boys" and "A Little Is Enough." Now, this album was ranked in Rolling Stone's greatest albums of the 80s, so for whatever that's worth. And it usually tops as one of the better solo efforts from an artist who was in a successful band. Of course, The Who being Pete Townshend. Now, Pete Townshend said, now talking about the title of the album, Empty Glass, I kind of wanted to discuss that a little bit. He says, "I called it Empty Glass because this idea when you go to the tavern, which is to God, and you ask for his love, he's the bartender, and he gives you a drink. And what you have to give him is an empty glass. There's no point in giving him your heart if it's full already. There's no point going to God if your heart's full of Doris." So, quite interesting. I think that idea deals with a lot of Pete's spiritualism. Of course, a lot of people know of his following of Avatar Meher Baba, who Pete Townshend was and still is a follower of. Now, the album's recorded kind of and written between that period of 78 and 80. The Who was pretty active around this time, and so Pete found himself in this sort of crossfire of writing for his solo stuff as well as for The Who. And a lot of fans have considered this to be better than The Who's 1981 album, Face Dances, and they sort of accused Pete of kind of hoarding his best songs for this. And I think even Roger Daltrey kind of felt like a lot of these songs should have been Who songs, particularly "Rough Boys" and the title track, "Empty Glass." Pete Townshend sort of later came back. His response to that was, well, if Roger had sung this, he'd wanted like more clarity in it, whereas Pete was more ambiguous. Was the song sort of homosexual? It kind of started the whole discussion about Pete Townshend possibly having some homosexual tendencies, and so he felt like Roger would have scaled back some of that, whereas he didn't. Now, there was the song "Empty Glass" that was kind of attempted by The Who, Keith Moon playing and John Entwistle. And if you've got the CD reissue of that album, you can hear their version. Very notable for the suicidal undertones, and they were changed by the time this album came out. The lyric, "killing each other, then we jump off the ledge," became "killing each other by driving a wedge." Chris Thomas produced the album. He'd also worked with Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon, the Pretenders' first album. And Pete actually, funny enough, wanted to work with Todd Rundgren. And Todd was ready to go on this album. And Pete sort of realized that he and Todd were very, very much alike. And of course, Pete recognized that Todd was a better guitar player and a better singer, and so I think he kind of got intimidated by all that, and so he said he was just going to take the influence and go with it. But as an album, it's pretty solid. The three singles I mentioned, The song "And I Moved," from what I understand, was written for Bette Midler. She felt like it was a little too raunchy for Bette Midler, if you can imagine. But Pete kept the context, which again, the homosexual thing, because he was singing from the vantage point of a woman. The song Jules and Jim, a biting, scathing sort of look at rock critics at the time, who Pete kind of always has had a love-hate relationship with. Little is Enough, a great sort of look at spirituality. So really, really good stuff. I love the lyrics to that song. I'm after a piece of that diamond in you, but a little of your love is enough. A lot of themes that Pete Townshend, the spiritual themes that I sort of connect with, are prevalent here. And it's a great pop rock album. Just, all the songs hold together very well. So today's daily record, Empty Glass by Pete Townshend. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter. Comment down below. Do you know this album? Like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. You know the deal. Tommy Burton 75 is the Instagram and Twitter. In the meantime, I'll see you all again tomorrow with another daily record.